Imagine stepping through time into Amsterdam at its absolute zenith. The 1600s, when this once modest fishing village had transformed into the beating heart of global commerce. The air thick with salt spray and exotic spices, the canals teeming with merchant vessels from every corner of the known world, and the streets alive with an energy that could only come from a city that had seized its moment in history. Through AI reconstruction, we're about to walk those cobblestone streets, peer into those grand canal houses, and witness the raw power of the Dutch Golden Age at its peak. Our journey begins where Amsterdam's fortune was forged, the IJ harbour and the sprawling docklands that stretched along the city's northern edge. In the 1600s, this waterfront was nothing short of spectacular. Hundreds of ships crowded the harbour at any given time, their masts creating a forest of wood and canvas that dominated the skyline. These weren't just local fishing boats. These were the mighty vessels of the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, the VOC, the Dutch East India Company that will become the world's first multinational corporation. The VOC's East India men, some reaching up to 150 feet in length, sat heavy in the water, their holds bursting with treasures from the Far East, nutmeg and cloves from the Moluccas, pepper from Java, cinnamon from Ceylon, silk and porcelain from China and Japan. The constant loading and unloading created a cacophony of sound. The creak of rope and timber, the shouts of dockworkers in a dozen languages, the splash of cargo being transferred to smaller boats for transport through the city's canals. The VOC's warehouses were massive brick structures, stretching for hundreds of yards. Inside, exotic goods were sorted, stored, and prepared for auction. The smell alone would have been intoxicating. Cinnamon, pepper, coffee, and tea mingling with the tar and hemp of maritime industry. Moving inland from the docks, we encounter Amsterdam's most ambitious project of the century, the Great Canal Ring expansion. In the early 1600s, the city embarked on a massive urban planning project that would triple its size and create the iconic concentric canals, the Herengracht, Keizersgracht, and Prinsengracht. Walking along the Herengracht in 1650, you'd be surrounded by construction. Wealthy merchants were building their grand canal houses, narrow but deep, rising 4 or 5 stories high, with elaborate gabled roofs and large windows to display their prosperity. The Golden Bend featured the most magnificent residences, their facades decorated with sandstone, their interiors filled with paintings by Rembrandt and Vermeer, exotic furniture from the East, and walls covered in gilded leather. Each house featured a hoist beam extending from the roof, necessary for lifting furniture through the windows, since the steep Dutch staircases made moving large items impossible. Ground floors often served as offices or shops, with living quarters above. Behind these grand facades, smaller buildings and courtyards housed servants, workshops, and storage. At the very center sat the Dam Square, the political, economic, and social heart of the city. Dominated by the new town hall, now the Royal Palace, which began construction in 1648, the square was a constant swirl of activity. Built on 13,659 wooden piles, driven into the marshy ground, it was the largest secular building in Europe, filled with marble and artwork, celebrating Dutch naval supremacy and commercial prowess. Across the square stood the Waag, the weighhouse where goods were officially measured and taxed. Every day, merchants gathered here to conduct business, creating an open-air exchange where fortunes were made and lost on tulip bulbs, grain futures, or shares in VOC voyages. This was capitalism in its raw, emerging form, innovative, volatile, and transformative. Amsterdam's markets in the 1600s were unlike anything else in Europe. The Nieuwe Kerk area hosted specialized markets throughout the week. Mondays brought the book market, drawing scholars from across Europe. Amsterdam's printing industry was flourishing. Wednesdays featured the fish market, where North Sea herring, the foundation of early Dutch prosperity, was sold alongside exotic imports. The Kalverstraat was lined with shops selling goods from around the world: Japanese lacquerware, Indian cotton, Turkish carpets, Brazilian sugar, and Caribbean tobacco. Local craftsmen produced Delftware pottery, imitating Chinese porcelain for the growing middle class who couldn't afford the real thing. Step into a typical Amsterdam tavern, and you'd find yourself in a democratic space where social classes mixed more freely than elsewhere in Europe. These establishments served as informal business exchanges, news centers, and social clubs. The smell of tobacco smoke filled the air. Pipe smoking was ubiquitous. The drinks reflected global trade. Beer remained the staple, but wine from France, Spain, and Germany flowed freely among those who could afford it. Coffee houses began appearing in the mid-1600s, introducing the bitter black brew from Arabia. Gin, or Genever, was the workingman's drink, produced locally and consumed with enthusiasm. These taverns were also artistic spaces. Rembrandt frequented many, both as customer and debtor. Dutch Golden Age painters often set their scenes in such establishments, capturing the boisterous groups, card games, and musical performances that provided entertainment. Amsterdam's society in the 1600s was both remarkably open and rigidly structured. At the top sat the regenten, the merchant oligarchs who controlled the city government and the VOC. These families accumulated staggering wealth. A successful VOC voyage could return profits of 400% or more. Below them, a substantial middle class emerged. Smaller merchants, skilled craftsmen, professionals. Amsterdam's guilds were powerful organizations that regulated trades and maintained quality standards. A master carpenter or silversmith could live comfortably, own property, and commission a family portrait from a competent artist. The working class, dock workers, sailors, servants, labourers, lived more precariously but still better than their counterparts in most of Europe. Wages were higher in Amsterdam, and food was relatively affordable thanks to the city's role as a grain hub. However, the gap between rich and poor was widening, and the almshouses that dotted the city spoke to both Dutch charitable traditions and the reality of urban poverty. As we conclude our reconstruction of 1600s Amsterdam, we see a city that was simultaneously building for the future and living intensely in the present. The VOC ships that crowded the harbour were instruments of both commerce and conquest, bringing prosperity to Amsterdam while establishing a colonial system that would have profound effects across Asia. Walking through reconstructed Amsterdam of the 1600s reveals a city at a pivotal moment in world history, when global capitalism was taking shape, when a small nation could project power worldwide through corporate organization and naval supremacy, and when urban life was being reimagined on a scale, and with a sophistication that would influence city planning for centuries to come. The Amsterdam we can visit today still bears the imprint of this golden age in every canal, every gable, and every street name that echoes the spice trade that made it all possible.